Hello. Hi, Nina. Hello, everybody. We are finishing volume 3 today. We are already here. Hi, Blue. How's everyone doing? I feel kind of nervous that this volume is going to end on kind of a cliffhanger. Like, if there would be a volume to end on a cliffhanger, it might be this one. Yeah, I'm pretty good. My mom and one of her friends was in town visiting, so I just got lunch with them earlier today. I'm in, like, sort of a prolonged food coma. But I'm gonna try and pull through. Hi, Lovely. I guess I'm gonna get started. We're on page 281, chapter 92, which is a great name. Scoundrel Shuxiong comes online. Hi, Ward of. A drop of water dripped from a crack in the stone cave and landed on the tip of Moshi's nose. Moshi's lashes quivered as he slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was unfocused. He couldn't tell if he was in the past or the present. The mess within Bat Tower swayed before his eyes, interspersed with glimpses of Gumong's meager silhouette walking into the dusky distance. His heart was still beating, muffled by his flesh, after having nearly faltered, pushed to the limits of what it could bear. Moshi took a moment to breathe. Once his vision had cleared somewhat, he stretched his stiff neck and looked around. He was lying inside a shallow cave, the starry sky visible beyond its mouth. A fire crackled merrily, and 3 people sat by the fire pit: Gumong, Zhang Yeshue, and Murong Chuyi. Yue Chunqing lay not far off, with Zhang Yeshue's coat draped over him. Moshi's head ached atrociously. He had to close his eyes. The memories from before he lost consciousness sparked like flint in his head. All the past events within the time mirror, Gumong slowly walking toward the horizon, with Liu Jianxing's head on his back, the old beggar and his mournful folk song. I too once rode a splendid horse. My flag bid thousands on their course. One cry dispersed the demon crowd, godlike before my feet all bowed. Today none mark my glories past. Men once called friends all turn their backs. And the coldness on Gumong's face when they finally came out of the mirror, as he stood in the storm of blood. Moshi sat bolt upright. The movement alerted the group chatting around the fire. Gumong was first to notice. He turned and met Moshi's eyes. They looked at each other in silence. The first thing Gumong said wasn't directed at Moshi. He stared at Moshi for a moment, and then turned to Jiang Yeshue and Murong Chuyi. He's awake. The remaining 2 looked over. Jiang Yeshue wheeled his wooden chair to Moshi's side. Shiha Jun, how do you feel? Is anything bothering you? Moshi didn't respond. Heart pounding, his eyes never strayed from Gumong where he sat by the fire. He was still stunned and bewildered by Gumong suddenly regaining his memories. He even thought it might be a dream, but when he closed his eyes and opened them again, he was still in this cave with these people. It was real. The time mirror had shocked Gumong's brain when it brought him back to the past, and somehow repaired his mind. Moshi's dry lips parted, his voice shockingly rough. You... Gumong glanced at him, but his blue eyes quickly turned aside. indifferent. The expression he wore was nearly identical to that of the youth from 8 years ago, only that there seemed to be a thin layer of frost over it. Jiang Yeshui saw that Gumong hadn't responded and was afraid Moshi would feel awkward. Gumong's fine. Also, while you were unconscious, he told us about recovering his memories, so you don't need to worry. Moshi stared past Jiang Yeshui to the silent Gumong. He lay sprawled casually, an elbow propped on his knee. His lapels were even somewhat loosened, just like the roguish soldier he'd been. Again and again, Moshi had been shocked upon entering the mirror, but this final blow was beyond anything he could imagine. When Moshi realized Gumong had recovered his memories, he'd felt a flash of pathetic, short-lived ecstasy, thinking that they finally shared the same past. But the joy only lasted an instant. As he looked at Gumong now, the fervor in his heart slowly cooled. That brief flutter was crushed by unfamiliarity, anxiety, helplessness, and confusion. In that moment, he came to several realizations, but all were numbed by the tortuous mental beating he'd received. After a long, dull pause, he finally settled on this. Gumong had regained his memories, but he acted much less like the Gu Shixiang he remembered. On the contrary, he was incredibly cold and removed. He had been first to notice Moshi was awake, but rather than get up, he was content to let Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yeshui deal with it. He'd even turned away to take a leisurely sip of hot tea. Moshi examined Gumong's face and profile, and the heaviness in his heart deepened. At the sight of him staring silently at Gumong, Jiang Yeshui asked with concern, "Shihajun, are you okay?" Moshi paused a moment, looking away from Gumong and doing his best to sound calm. "I am." And because he didn't want Jiang Yeshui to pick up on anything else, he changed the topic. "Where are we?" "Still on Bat Island," Jiang Yeshui answered. It's become a bit of a sticky situation. Wu Yan sealed off the entire island, and we've sustained too many injuries, so we can't leave just yet. Who? It's my question, too. The island's Bat Queen. Her name's Wu Yan. Yan as in swallow. "Isn't she a bat?" Moshi asked wearily. Why does she call herself a bird?" "Yes, it's an odd name for sure," Jiang Yeshui said. "When we entered the tower, Wu Yan was at a critical point in her secluded cultivation within the underground palace, so she didn't emerge even with all the ruckus we made. After you destroyed her tribesmen in the tower, Chuyi." Jiang Yeshui paused, feeling uncomfortable, and corrected himself. "Xiaojiu rescued Chunqing from her prison. When you were passed out, she finished her qi circulation and broke seclusion to come after us. Fortunately, we had Gumong." As he spoke, Jiang Yeshui glanced at Gumong. He was being perfectly polite to the others, and grinned at Jiang Yeshui as if he'd never defected. Jiang Yeshui didn't know how to respond. He looked away. Gumong stepped in to handle it, which is how we managed to escape and find this cave. But Wu Yan is crazed with fury. At this point, she's covered all of Bat Island with alarm spells. A moment's carelessness, and she'll find us. I've set up a concealment talisman here. We'll be fine for a while, so you don't need to worry just yet. Moshi massaged his pulsing temples. He turned to look at Yue Chunqing, who was curled up within Jiang Yeshui's greatcoat, fast asleep. In the dozen odd days since they'd last crossed paths, Yue Chunqing had lost a good deal of weight. His once round cheeks had become sunken, the lines of his face pathetic and helpless. "How is he?" Moshi asked. As Jiang Yeshui took a breath to respond, Gumong cut in. "Why not come over here to talk? Come warm up by the fire and have something to eat." Moshi's scarred and calloused heart beat faster at these vaguely gentle words. He looked up at Gumong. Just as he was about to say a word of thanks, Gumong lazily continued. Or is Shihajun so delicate that he can't walk? Do I need to come give you a piggyback ride? Moshi's words lodged in his throat, choking the breath from him. He had thought they could at least mend their relationship somewhat after coming out of the time mirror. He wanted to make amends, at least. To properly apologize for his absence back then, and try to ask Gumong for the truth one more time. But Gumong didn't seem to share these sentiments. The hostility in his words was no different than when he was the Liao Kingdom's loyal subject. He sounded absolutely unrepentant. Gumong, Moshi said softly. Gumong scoffed. You do need me to carry you? Moshi's eyes dulled, like a candle extinguished after guttering too long. Gumong had put out the last glimmer of light in his eyes. Gumong's attitude seemed to mock him. Oh, Moshi, what's the point? The two of us are already like this. Whatever the truth is, whatever happened in the past, let's just be enemies. What other choice do we have? Moshi clenched his jaw and rose. Despite his injuries, he managed to make it to the fire pit unassisted. He cast Gumong a meaningful glance, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he turned away. He silently sat next to Murong Chuyi, as far as possible from Gumong. Naturally, Gumong noticed. He smiled without saying a word and focused instead on turning the meat over the fire. An uncomfortable silence descended. After a moment, Moshi turned to ask Murong Chuyi, "How is Yue Chunqing?" Murong Chuyi's face was wan. Eyes downcast, he said simply, "I've taken care of his injuries, so there's no threat to his life. However, he's been poisoned by the Bat Queen's goo worms, and I don't have an antidote." Moshi stared. The Shangao had said Yue Chunqing was locked in the cell and covered in blood-sucking vines. It hadn't mentioned anything about a goo worm. What kind of poison is this goo worm? I've never seen it before. There's no record of it in any cultivation realm texts. I interrogated two of the bat demons guarding his cell, but they didn't know much either. The only thing they said... Murong Chuyi paused. Frowning with disgust, he coughed quietly. Jiang Yeshue came over and offered him a cup of hot tea. "Xiaozhou, have some." Murong Chuyi gave him a withering look. He shoved the tea aside, spilling it all over Jiang Yeshue's sleeves. Jiang Yeshue fell silent. After waiting for his breathing to steady, Murong Chuyi continued. The only thing they said was that this goo worm could take a body drained of blood and create an undead puppet in the form of an individual of the poisoner's choosing. It could reconstruct everything about that person, from their appearance to their voice, memories, and feelings. With nothing better to do, Gumong had summoned his demonic dagger to play with. He poked it into the fire like a pair of tongs, stoking the merrily burning flames. At Murong Chuyi's words, he asked, "So it kills someone and then uses their corpse to construct someone new?" "Precisely." "What is the demoness after?" Gumong nimbly spun the blade in his slender fingers. "Who does she want to reconstruct using Yue Chunqing's body?" "I don't know," Murong Chuyi responded wearily. "Those two bat guards were loyal to the end. When I pressed them, they shattered their own cores and killed themselves. After I recover, I'll trap a suitable monster here on the island and ask some questions." He coughed again. "If we want to cure Yue Chunqing of this poison, the more we know, the better." "All right then," Gumong said decisively. "How about this? I have a slave collar around my neck, so I can't run away no matter what. You guys haven't yet recovered. Why don't I go grab a likely demon for you to interrogate? Murong Chuyi looked at him. How kind. Why? Gumong smiled at Murong Chuyi. I'm just looking out for myself. In exchange for helping save him, I would ask you, sirs, to do a kind deed. Do me a solid. Don't tell anyone I've regained my memories once we return to the capital. No one had expected this, and all three of them fell silent. Why are you looking at me like that? Gumong gave the dagger one last twirl. With a flourish, the blade became a wisp of spiritual energy that sank back into his palm. Is my request so strange? Gumong, Zhang Yeshue said, this is the crime of lying to one's emperor. Gumong smiled. He was antagonistic and cold to Mo Shi, but there was friendliness in his expression when he spoke to the others. Sorry about that. I know I'll be troubling you all, but I don't have much choice. If the rest of Chonghua knows I've recovered, I'll probably be sent back to Luomei Pavilion, and those with grudges will come swarming. And His Imperial Majesty, too. He'll take me for black magic experiments and interrogate me about the Liao Kingdom's secrets. Murong Chuyi's expression was cold as ice and snow as he asked, Do you not deserve such treatment? I'm not saying I don't, Gumong said shamelessly. But can't I fear that fate, at least? Who'd want to spend their days waiting to get offed or get fucked? Murong Chuyi paled at such vulgarity. You... Zhang Yeshue tried to compromise. If you don't want to return to Luomei Pavilion, we'll keep you safe. But we can't hide this truth. You should declare Liao Kingdom secrets to Chonghua. I can't divulge anything, Gumong said. I've forgotten. No one spoke. At the expressions on the faces of these three noble sirs, Gumong added earnestly, Sorry, I've really forgotten. Moshi watched Gumong across the fire. That organ in his chest hurt so horribly, it seemed to pulse with resentment at its neglect. He closed his eyes, biting out each word. Did you not regain your memories? I didn't say I remembered everything, Gumong said. I'm missing 2 souls. No matter what I do, I'll never recover completely. Moshi nailed Gumong with a stare. Hatred and heartbreak were clear in his eyes, but he exerted all his will to keep his delicate features composed. And how, exactly, did you lose those 2 souls? The smile on Gumong's face disappeared. After a time he said lightly, Oh, this is also something I've forgotten. Moshi said nothing. Don't look at me like that. I really don't know. Believe me or don't. If you don't, you could use the soul recording spell or draught of confession to torture me as you like. If you can get the truth out, I'll admit defeat. It's sad boy hours right now. Moshi turned away, his grip slowly tightening around his own knee. He didn't reply. Murong Chuyi had remained cool and calm. Unswayed by emotion, he considered Gumong's words and returned to the topic at hand. If you're afraid of harsh treatment upon our return, why not just kill us and escape? Good question, gorgeous. Gumong chuckled with a thoughtful hand to his chin. Cold and beautiful men are certainly hard to handle. Shihajun is one example, and Murong Xiansheng is another. Murong Chuyi and Moshi greeted the statement with identical silences. Gumong laughed, but his blue eyes swept across each of them in turn. Let's see. It does seem like I have a reasonable chance of killing you all and escaping. Look, Zhang Xiong is disabled, and he's used up much too much of his spiritual energy. Murong Xiong doesn't seem to be at his best either. He must have been injured saving his nephew. This Yue clan kiddo isn't even awake, so I could kill him more easily than I would a sparrow. His gaze fell next upon Moshi. It was a fleeting glance, like a dragonfly skimming water, before he looked indifferently away. He crossed his arms and grinned. My god, at this rate, it'd be more absurd if I didn't kill you all and run. So? Asked Murong Chuyi. With a flick of his fingertip, Gumong summoned the dagger Yongye once more. He lunged forward without warning, but Murong Chuyi had been watching this whole time. He summoned a gleaming gold talisman and instantly raised a protective barrier. Gumong looked at the barrier and spread his hands with a smile. You see, it'll end up like this, won't it? If I tried to kill anyone, you guys would retaliate, even if demonic chi gave me an advantage. My core is still broken, and I might still lose. Plus, I certainly wouldn't make it out unscathed, and when the noise alerts that bat lady, what then? Should I lie here and let her mold me like a clay figurine? Murong Chuyi stared at Gumong for a moment. The golden light at his fingertips slowly extinguished, and he turned to glance at the unconscious Yue Chunqing. I'll trust you this once. If you help us, I won't speak of your condition once we leave. Gumong smiled. Your word alone won't do. Can you guarantee your cute little nephew's mouth will also stay sealed? He paused, his fluid gaze finally landing on the silent Mo Shi, and Shihajun's mouth. Gumong ran his tongue over sharp incisors, his mannerisms retaining their wolfishness. His gaze was dark with secrets as he stared at Mo Shi's pale lips, his voice a low, syrupy murmur. The most stubborn of all. Murong Xiong, could you do me a favor and ask him the same question? See if he's willing to cooperate and keep those pretty lips of his shut tight for me. I didn't know that I didn't think Gumong would be going in this direction. Like I don't know how I thought he was going to be after getting out of the time mirror, but not like this. I'm not I have conflicting feelings about it. That's the end of the chapter. And we're at chapter 93, which is called Shixiong Won't Pamper You Today. Gumong's arch smile and relentless stare filled Mo Shi with an awkwardness he hadn't felt in a long time. He bit his lip and turned away. Of course Murong Chuyi wouldn't plead with Mo Shi and Zhang Yixue on Gumong's behalf, but since he had shown where he stood on the matter, it seemed worth considering. Gumong casually clasped one shoulder, his back against the stone wall as he spun the dagger in his free hand. How does that sound? Do we have a deal? Helping a criminal conceal important information would amount to the great crime of deceiving one's emperor. However, Gumong's assessment wasn't wrong. They were truly all in the same boat. Zhang Yixue glanced at Murong Chuyi. If Xiaozhou is willing to do this, then I won't say anything either. As long as you don't make things difficult for us in the future, I'll help you keep this secret. Gumong smiled as he cupped his hands at Zhang Yixue. Sensible. Thanks. He then turned to look at Mo Shi, that slight smile dimming. Shihajun, what about you? Mo Shi was silent for a beat. I won't hand you over to the Emperor. Perfect. Gumong smiled again lazily. Everyone is a gentleman here. A man's word cannot be taken back. I'll help you with this. You'll help me keep my secret. And we're even. Do you plan to go trap a demon now? Murong Chuyi asked. Gumong sat down. No rush. I used up too much spiritual energy escaping Wu Yan's clutches. Let Guga have a bite first. With that, he turned the two skewers hung over the fire. Only then did Mo Shi notice that there was a plump goose suspended over the fire pit. Mo Shi was a proud person, but he'd just witnessed Gumong's past suffering. His heart ached bitterly. He still wanted to make amends. So he quietly asked, "Where'd you get the goose?" Gumong ignored him. Moshi shut his mouth. Zhang Yeshui noticed the awkwardness and warmly replied, "It was stored on my walnut ship." He brought out the tiny ship he had used to ferry them to the island. Putting the thumb-sized ship on the ground, he tapped it with a fingertip. The vessel immediately grew a dozen times larger, to the size of a wooden basin. Zhang Yeshui called out in a gentle voice, "Boatwoman, could you please bring us some more tea and refreshments?" "Coming." From the inside of the basin-sized ship came a crisp and pleasant voice with a soft Wu dialect accent, giggling. "There's fresh fruit and desserts, and we've got Miao Yu tea from Lingshan and Dan Song tea from Wudong. Which would you like, my lord?" "Some of each." The tinkling voice laughed. "All right, coming right up." The bamboo cabin curtain on the walnut ship swished, and a lifelike clay maiden emerged. On the ship, she was only half the height of a palm, but she transformed into a clay servant the size of a child as soon as she touched the ground. She carried a wooden tray laden with fruit and desserts, as well as 2 pots of hot tea. Moshi watched the clay boat maiden cheerfully settle the tray next to the fire pit. "Why didn't we see this puppet on the ship?" he asked. "She's cleverer than the other puppets. I spent a lot of time on her. When we were on the walnut ship, she was busy with the steering, so you didn't see her." The clay boat maiden looked up, revealing willowy brows and slender phoenix eyes. Zhang Yeshui's careful work was evident. She was merely a clay person, but her face was as detailed as a real human's. All her paints and lacquers had been attentively applied, and she moved more smoothly than her clay brethren. The boat maiden performed an obeisance and said in a charming voice, "If there's nothing else, I'll wait on the ship." Gumong was watching with rapt interest and stopped her. Hey, miss, don't be in such a rush to leave," he asked with a smile. "Do you have any lychee wood on your ship?" "The mast is made of lychee wood, but unfortunately I can't give it to you." "You know why I want lychee wood?" Gumong asked curiously. The maiden chuckled and pointed to the crackling bonfire. "Meat roasted over lychee wood has an extraordinary flavor. Gongzi must have a craving." Astonished, Gumong turned to Zhang Yeshui. "How does she know that?" Zhang Yeshui lowered his gaze and laughed. "When I was refining her, I merged a copy of Recipes of the 9 Provinces into her head." "Damn," Gumong clapped. "I've been away just a few years, and Zhang Xiong's artificing skills have improved considerably. These constructs are not only lifelike, but also clever." Zhang Yeshui glanced at Murong Chuyi. "I'm still not as good as Xiaozhou." Blue. Guess the puppy has gone offline and the wolf is now online. Yeah. Murong Chuyi pretended to be deaf. He leaned silently against the stone wall with his arms crossed. Despite Murong Chuyi's attitude, Zhang Yeshui smiled faintly. He allowed the boat maiden to return to the cabin and shrank the boat back to the size of a walnut. After he'd stowed the ship back in his Qiankun pouch, he continued to warmly compliment Murong Chuyi. "My Xiaozhou is the greatest grandmaster artificer of all. He can transform a flower into a ship, a raindrop into a tower." Zhang Yeshui spoke with intent to cajole, but it didn't work on Murong Chuyi. He closed his phoenix eyes as if repulsed. Moshi and Gumong both stared. What kind of power, Moshi wondered, did this ignorant immortal have for both his nephews to praise him so? While Yue Chunqing praised him with fiery enthusiasm, gushing about his uncle to anyone he met, Jiang Yeshui wouldn't necessarily mention him unprompted. But oddly, whenever the two of them were compared, Jiang Yeshui would say without hesitation that Murong Chuyi was his better, despite being one of the best artificer elders at the academy himself. Jiang Yeshui's self-deprecating praise was different from Yue Chunqing's loud boasting. Murong Chuyi's indifference to Yue Chunqing only made Yue Chunqing look foolish. When Jiang Yeshui praised Murong Chuyi so sincerely at his own expense and was still ignored, he seemed rather pathetic. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Gumong spoke up. Murong Xiancheng is of the older generation. It's natural that Zhang Sheng cannot compare. Come, the goose is almost ready. Let's have something to eat. You haven't had my crispy roast goose before, right? Give it a try. Although Gumong was an enemy of Chonghua, Jiang Yeshui couldn't bring himself to hate him, while Murong Chuyi had no sense of patriotism to begin with. Besides, they all shared a goal at the moment, so they put aside any petty bickering. The roast goose was ready, dripping grease that hissed when it fell into the flames. Gumong took it off the spit, picked the plumpest part of the goose breast, and sliced it thinly, the skin crackling beneath his little knife. The savory fragrance of meat and char assaulted the senses, crisp golden brown skin clinging to the firm, piping hot meat. Gumong placed each slice on a banana leaf and sprinkled coarse salt over the top, carving just enough for 2 servings before passing them to Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yeshui. As Jiang Yeshui tried a bite, Gumong smiled. How is it? I didn't know you could cook. Gumong laughed out loud. If only we had some lychee wood and stuffed the goose with berries while it roasted, I guarantee the flavor would leave you speechless. When did you learn to make this? Jiang Yeshui asked. I taught myself. I'm a genius. As Gumong spoke, he carved some more goose meat. Doesn't it hit the spot? Why didn't you make this back then? Jiang Yeshui remarked. Moshi, staring into that warm bonfire, murmured, He did. Jiang Yeshui was startled, but still managed to smile warmly. That's right. You two were close in those days. I remember Gumong really did take good care of you. But it seemed Gumong didn't wish to be associated with Moshi. He hastily waved a hand. It was nothing. I wouldn't quite call it care. He turned to Moshi with a shallow smile. It's been so long, but you still remember that goose. As I recall, it wasn't my best effort. It tasted like wax. Shiha-jun, however much you hate me, I'll ask you not to bring up my shortcomings right now. He rubbed his nose, unwittingly leaving a smear of soot. I do have my pride, you know. You know, I want to believe that Gumong is actually acting this way because he's trying to, like, cover up pain. And he doesn't actually feel this way about Moshi right now. But that's what I want to believe. Across the fire, Moshi watched Gumong's smiling, callous face. There were torrents of words stuck in his throat, but it would be futile, even if he could express them. He couldn't figure out how to talk to Gumong. He felt that he might do something extremely reckless at the tiniest impulse. Should he open his mouth and vent his feelings, he'd never be able to take it back. And so, he stayed silent. Whether Gumong was purposefully distancing himself from Moshi, or whether he genuinely viewed him as an enemy, Moshi chose to endure it without complaint for as long as he could. Gumong spread the crisp and fragrant goose over another banana leaf. He retracted the knife and sat back down with his own leaf in hand. Jiang Yeshui was an observant man. He paused in the middle of his meal, as he noticed something was amiss. Gumong had served him and Murong Chuyi, but not Moshi. This was already quite awkward. On top of that, Moshi was a pampered scion who never dirtied his hands with such tasks. There was no way he'd know how to carve roast goose. The atmosphere grew even more uncomfortable. Just as Jiang Yeshui was about to speak up to smooth things over, Gumong looked up. "Oh, right. I forgot about yours, Shihajun." Moshi was silent. He continued, "Do you want me to help you cut some?" But before Moshi could respond, Gumong went back to eating from his banana leaf with a smile. "Ah yeah, never mind," he said without a hint of sincerity. "Think how much blood I have on my hands. How could the noble and honorable Shihajun be willing to eat anything I've touched? You'd better do it yourself." "There's no need," Moshi replied. "I'm not hungry." Jiang Yeshui knew Moshi was incredibly stubborn. He couldn't help saying, "Shihajun, you've only just recovered. You should really eat something." "It's fine," Moshi stood. "You guys go ahead. I'll worry about myself." "But if he says he's fine, believe him." Gumong pulled Jiang Yeshui back and smiled. "Shihajun isn't some 15-year-old brat who's just joined the army anymore. Give him some credit, Jiang Xiong. Do you want another drumstick?" Jiang Yeshui fell silent. When they'd finished the goose and had some tea and refreshments, it was time for Gumong to go. He summoned the demonic weapon Yongye and prepared to set off. "You guys should sit in the cave and meditate, recover some spiritual energy. Wait a shichen for me. If I haven't found a suitable demon by then, I'll use the old way to tell you. Understood?" This old way was via messenger butterfly. When they had been out on the battlefield in the past, their scouts had used them to pass intel from the front lines to their comrades. "Yes, don't worry," Jiang Yeshui said. Gumong hid the dagger in his sleeve. "I'm off then." His silhouette vanished as he leapt swiftly into the darkness. Moshi stood at the cave mouth. As Gumong had left, they'd brushed shoulders, but neither had looked at the other. Now that Gumong was out of sight, Moshi stared out toward where he had melted into the gloom. Jiang Yeshui came to Moshi's side. "What happened to you?" Moshi's velvet lashes lowered. He said nothing. "You've been acting strange ever since you came out of the time mirror. I asked Gumong about it a bit ago. He said the mirror shocked his brain and repaired most of his memories, but he didn't say much more. I knew I wouldn't get anything else out of him, so I let it go." Jiang Yeshui paused. "Now that he's gone, can you tell me what you saw in the mirror?" "We returned to 8 years ago," Moshi replied. Jiang Yeshui's eyes widened. "Right after Gumong defected?" "No, before," said Moshi. "The days before he defected." Seeing the way Moshi's face went ashen, Jiang Yeshui hesitantly asked, "In the mirror, did you try to persuade Gumong to change his mind?" "I tried, but it was no use," Moshi said wearily. "That's not the important part, though. The most important is, I saw some things we didn't know about before." The hand Jiang Yeshui had laid on the arm of his wheelchair curled slightly. "What did you see?" he asked with concern. Moshi paused for a moment. "I can't say yet. I'm missing a lot of context, and what I know is only the tip of the iceberg. I want to wait until we return to the capital. I need to investigate some events that happened 8 years ago." Jiang Yeshui had opened his mouth to reply when they suddenly heard Yue Chunqing's faint, teary voice from the depths of the cave. He sobbed, "Fourth uncle." That's the end of the chapter. This is truly cruel and unusual. Blue, I'm really going to slap him too. Yeah. We're on chapter 94, which is called Two Nephews. At Yue Chunqing's cry, Zhang Yeshui whipped around to look toward Murong Chuyi, while Moshi turned to Yue Chunqing. Is he having a nightmare? Curled up beneath the greatcoat, Yue Chunqing was still asleep, with only a small wisp of black hair visible. His voice was choked with tears. Fourth uncle, don't be mad, he sobbed. Don't blame me. Don't ignore me. Murong Chuyi wasn't one for emotional confrontations, so even though Yue Chunqing was clearly calling for him in his dream, he pretended not to hear. He closed his eyes and began to meditate where he was. Yue Chunqing continued to mumble. The nightmare seemed to be torturing him. By the end, the confusion and heartbreak in his tone was almost tangible. Fourth uncle, the still childish youth whimpered tearfully. Murong Chuyi knitted his brows and was silent a moment. When he could bear it no longer, he rose with a sweep of his sleeves and swiftly sat beside Yue Chunqing. He lowered his head to look at the young man. His elegant face, like moonlight on a frozen lake, showed an unmistakable reluctance and impatience, yet still he moved the coat aside and brushed jade-like porcelain fingers over Yue Chunqing's forehead. With that single touch, Murong Chuyi's expression changed. How is he? Zhang Yeshui asked. He has a high fever, replied Murong Chuyi. Fevers and colds were little more than nuisances to cultivators. A single dose of medicine was usually enough to cure them completely. Nevertheless, Yue Chunqing's condition was dismaying. Zhang Yeshui maneuvered his chair over to them. First, he carefully tucked the greatcoat around Yue Chunqing, then reached up to check his temperature. He was immediately alarmed. So hot. He shouldn't have a fever. Murong Chuyi gazed down at Yue Chunqing's ruddy face. When I rescued him, I used the Sacred Heart technique. Moshi looked up at Murong Chuyi in surprise. Wasn't the Sacred Heart technique? Zhang Yeshui was also aghast. Xiaozhou, how could you? What? Murong Chuyi retorted coldly. That's a forbidden technique. So? Zhang Yeshui was silent. Expecting Murong Chuyi to abide by Chonghua's law was like expecting a fish to live on land. Completely impossible. The Sacred Heart technique was a forbidden healing spell. It could rapidly mend a grievously wounded body while ensuring that the patient would not catch any kind of cold or fever-like illness that might weaken them. It was a powerful, simple, and crude technique that a cultivator could easily grasp even without any specialty in medicine. And yet, such a miraculous healing technique was nowhere near commonplace. Just as no person was perfect, no spell was infallible. Sacred Heart had a terrifying drawback. It made extreme requirements of the spellcaster's mind. The wielder's so-called Sacred Heart needed to be pure and holy, free of any blemish. And while the cultivator was casting the healing spell, their mind must remain pure, without the slightest stray thought. A single faltering ripple, and the spellcaster's heart vein would suffer damage. A minor case would greatly diminish their vital energy. A severe case would result in instant death. Zhang Yeshui knew any attempt to reason with Murong Chuyi would be futile, so he ventured hesitantly. Then your body... Murong Chuyi ignored Zhang Yeshui's concern, instead lowering his head to check the pulse at Yue Chunqing's neck. After a few seconds, he opened his phoenix eyes and said, The Sacred Heart technique can prevent all common colds and illnesses, but Yue Chunqing still has a high fever. Is it because of the goo worm? Zhang Yeshui asked. Although Murong Chuyi didn't respond, he frowned slightly. This couldn't be caused by anything other than the goo. However, a poisonous insect that even the Sacred Heart technique couldn't suppress was sure to be enormously difficult to deal with. At the moment, they were completely in the dark as to the characteristics of the worm. All they could do was wait for Gumong to come back with some information that would help. "Let's wait." Murong Chuyi laid his hand on Yue Chunqing's forehead, smoothing the mussed hair at his temples. Wait for Gumong to return. They had no other choice. The three of them stood guard over Yue Chunqing, meditating and recovering their strength as they silently sat inside the cave and waited for Gumong. Moshi's innate power was the strongest of their group. On top of that, the time mirror had only consumed his spiritual and vital energy. He hadn't been physically wounded. He had mostly recovered before a Shichen had passed. When Moshi opened his eyes, he found that Murong Chuyi and Zhang Yeshue were both still weak and nourishing their qi. Murong Chuyi's condition seemed especially poor. His elegant face was like frozen jade, his lips not merely bloodless, but tinged a sickly green. Something was wrong. Moshi rose and walked over to Murong Chuyi, getting on one knee to look at him. "Murong Xiancheng?" Murong Chuyi didn't respond. Spiritual energy clashed between his knitted brows. He looked faintly pained. Moshi extended a hand and started in shock. Murong Chuyi's spiritual energy was so turbulent it showed signs of an impending qi deviation. He reached out at once to press 2 fingers to Murong Chuyi's temple, passing him spiritual energy. A long interval passed before Murong Chuyi slumped forward and hacked up a mouthful of filthy blood. Emerging from his meditative trance, he slowly opened his eyes and found Moshi's face with his unfocused gaze. Swiftly, he looked down and wiped at the bloodstains. "Many thanks," he said, voice rough. Moshi knew Murong Chuyi was cold and antisocial. He didn't want to say too much, but he still pressed his lips together upon seeing Murong Chuyi so unwell. "You should have felt it yourself. When you attracted the fire bats single-handedly, and then used the Sacred Heart technique soon after, you damaged your heart vein. If you recklessly meditate under these conditions, you'll fall prey to inner demons. Why didn't you say something?" "There's nothing to say," replied Murong Chuyi. Moshi stared pointedly. "I asked Shihajun not to speak of my injuries," Murong Chuyi continued. "I don't want more people finding out, whether it's Yue Chunqing or—" He paused, shooting a glance at Zhang Yeshue, who had entered an energy-gathering state. Or him. This was slightly strange. Everyone said the ignorant immortal was cold and aloof, unaffected by matters of the mortal world. He spent most of his days in seclusion, and rarely showed his face in public. Moshi had previously only understood that he treated both his nephews poorly. In these recent interactions, however, he realized there was a marked difference in how vicious Murong Chuyi was to Zhang Yeshue in comparison to Yue Chunqing. Murong Chuyi tended to ignore Yue Chunqing and didn't like to waste words on him. But if Yue Chunqing really clung to him, acted pathetic, and went overboard with praise, Murong Chuyi might spare him a glance or a few words as his elder. Furthermore, Murong Chuyi was willing to use forbidden techniques to save Yue Chunqing, even sustaining injuries in the process. Which was to say, when all was said and done, Yue Chunqing at least had a small place in Murong Chuyi's heart. But it was different with Zhang Yeshue. Zhang Yeshue's mother had been married to the same man as Murong Chuyi's adopted sister, Murong Huang. So perhaps Murong Chuyi was hostile towards Jiang Yeshui because Murong Huang had been mistreated on account of Jiang Yeshui's mother. But there was more than hostility. There was also hatred. There was even, Moshi couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt there was some hidden adverse emotion filling Murong Chuyi's eyes. Fourth uncle, it hurts. Yue Chunqing called again in a weak voice, muttering helplessly in his fevered delirium. My head, it hurts. Murong Chuyi looked at the child curled up in the corner. Yue Chunqing called for him several more times, whimpering. Then he mumbled another hoarse name. Mama. Mama. Murong Chuyi stiffened. He was always aloof and indifferent whenever Moshi saw him, unaffected by the vicissitudes of human feeling, whether in life or death, joy or fury. That face, clear as white jade, rarely showed a ripple of disturbance, but now Murong Chuyi's face seemed to be tangled in 1,000 emotions. He gritted his teeth, looking hateful and angry. Always so disappointing and disobedient. What right do you have to call for her? But still he took hold of Yue Chunqing's trembling hand. The youth's temperature was terrifyingly high. Murong Chuyi grasped Yue Chunqing's fingers tight, his severe expression flashing with a hint of tender sorrow. In the end, he stiffly tried to soothe him. It's all right. It's okay. Yue Chunqing mumbled in his sleep. It hurts. I'm here. It'll be okay. It hurts so much. Murong Chuyi's sword-like brows drew together sharply in anger. His patience had reached its limit. Bear with it. Moshi found himself speechless. Time passed like this. Eventually, Jiang Yeshui recovered most of his spiritual energy and woke from his trance. He looked around. Has Guxiang returned? Not yet, said Moshi. Jiang Yeshui went to Yue Chunqing as well, but with Murong Chuyi present, there was no place for him. Nor was he the one who ought to be holding Yue Chunqing's hand. His status in the Yue clan had always been thus. It was the same before he left the family, and it remained so now. Whether with his uncle or his brother, he was always the one pushed to the sidelines. He was the expendable one. Jiang Yeshui had long grown used to it. His wistful gaze paused only briefly on the hand Murong Chuyi was holding, before he spoke up. If his fever continues, why don't I use the Sacred Heart technique this time? Maybe. Swift footsteps outside the cave trampled the rest. We're back, we're back, we're back. Gumong charged into the cave. Following hesitantly at his heels was a half-transformed little demon, hiding behind Gumong and looking around in curiosity. Unbelievable. When Gumong left, he distinctly said that he would catch a demon, but this little creature seemed to have followed him back instead. Not only was it trailing Gumong of its own volition, but it had even curled a fuzzy brown claw tightly around Gumong's sleeve, as if it had entered a tiger's den, and Gumong was its trusted protector. Were Yue Chunqing awake, he would have definitely asked, Bro, did you drug it? But none of the three present would ask such a thing. Moshi stared at that delicate claw. He'd caught just a small glimpse of the little demon when it entered the cave. After that, it stuck close to Gumong, keeping its small body pressed behind him and refusing to show its face. Sorry for the wait, Gumong sighed. There are many demons on the island, but only a few who know anything of importance. Wu Yan is searching all over for us, so it took some time. How is our young Yue Gongzi? He has a fever, probably caused by the goo worm. Murong Chuyi paused, eyes flicking to Gumong's back. Who's this? Oh. Gumong smiled, then waved a hand to show them the little claw hooked around his sleeve. Wrong, wrong. Come out. These are the people I told you about. After a lengthy silence, a little face peeped out from behind Gumong, then quickly shrank back. Gumong turned and said consolingly, Don't worry, no one's going to hurt you. Only then did this little demon slowly and shyly step out from behind Gumong. She was a young female demon, though her exact age was difficult to discern. Her figure resembled that of an adolescent human girl. Upon closer examination, she wasn't a bat either. The fuzz that covered her dainty little body was tawny bird down. Her name is Rongrong. She's a little bird spirit, not a demon, Gumong explained with a smile. Rongrong, this is Murong Chuyi, Murong Xiong. This is Jiang Yeshue, Jiang Xiong. This is... He glanced at Mo Shi and held his gaze this time. This is Mo Shi, Mo Xiang, he said, still smiling. They're all good people. Why don't you say hi? Rongrong seemed to be very timid. She'd kept her head down all this time. Only after Gumong prompted her did she gently raise her eyes. Her features possessed a blossoming beauty, shaming flowers and moon alike. Upon her delicate face were a pair of beautifully soulful eyes and naturally scarlet lips. Her pale forehead was marked with a red pistil. I'm Arong, she murmured bashfully. I'm not a bird spirit. I'm just a half-immortal from the feathered tribe of Mount Jiuhua. That's the end of the chapter. I never know what to expect with this series. Yeah. We've got the bird tribe again. And it's almost 4 o'clock, so I'm gonna take like a 5 to 10 minute break. And when I come back, we're going to finish the book. We are so close. Yep. So I will be right back, and we'll find out what's going on with the bird immortal. Hello. I'm back. Oh, I'm sorry, Blue. I'll see you back in a little bit. We are back. And we are on page 307 for chapter 95 for Shixiong Takes It Too Far. Can y'all see me? What's happening? Oh, there we go. Okay. I know there's a delay in the live, but I was worried for a second it was frozen on the other screen. Okay, cool. We're good. Okay. Cool, awesome. And, what? Oh, yeah. Y'all were talking about how there might be a lore dump for the ending of the book, which it does kind of seem like it, but I guess we'll find out. Oh yeah, did I say this chapter is called Shixiong Takes It Too Far? Yeah. Slightly concerned about that. The feathered tribe of Mount Jiuhua. Everyone stood in shock at these words. Members of the feathered tribe were born with half-immortal bodies, and pure immortal blood ran in their veins. No matter how diluted by the currents of time, the feathered tribe was still the most mysterious race, and the one closest to the gods. The feathered tribe is reclusive and unpredictable. They reside in the immortal realm of Peach Blossom Springs, and may go hundreds of years without setting foot in the mortal world. Murong Chuyi's eyes scanned Rongrong. But you don't seem to conform to any of that. Rongrong immediately flushed. I was very young when I was brought here. I didn't grow up in the feathered tribe. That's why I'm not really the same as other tribe members. Who brought you here? Zhang Yeshui asked. Was it Wu Yan? At the name of Bat Island's ruler, Rongrong shuddered, swaying on her feet. At first, she shook her head in fright, but after a few moments, she remembered she was safe and hastily nodded. Zhang Yeshui turned to Gumong. She seems to be terribly afraid. Gumong patted Rongrong's head soothingly. Why don't you go sit by the fire and rest a little? I'll talk to them. Rongrong obediently went. It couldn't be helped. Some men had a natural charm when it came to the opposite sex. Gumong's comforting words were satin soft, but if Moshi were to say the same, the girl would probably think he was threatening her, and that she'd be buried on the spot if she didn't comply. Zhang Yeshui watched Rongrong pick her way over to the fire pit and asked Gumong, should we get her some tea and snacks? But Rongrong promptly sat next to the fire and stuck her hand in up to the wrist. She grabbed a handful of flames, as if she were scooping out a watermelon, then lowered her head to take dainty bites. Zhang Yeshui stared in silence. After a pause, Moshi turned to Gumong. It's barely been 2 shichen, and you've not only found such a useful individual, you've also won her trust. Gumong smiled smugly and cocked his head. Aren't I amazing? How did you manage it? Gumong stroked his chin. Maybe I look too deceptively kind and sweet. Shihajun, weren't you docile for me too? Ayah, men who smile easily make the best liars. People like you, Shihajun, you can't get away with it. You're a great beauty, to be sure, but every day you're giving orders to beat or kill people. You exude viciousness. Forget Tu Shichen. Even if you had 2 days and nights, you couldn't find anyone willing to come back with you. Those gentle blue eyes blinked up at Moshi. They were the mild color of a clear sky after rain, but they shone with a provocative glint. Shouldn't you do something about this? Come on, you're already 30, yet you still don't have a wife. This was clearly meant to get on Moshi's nerves. Gumong expected that Moshi would definitely fly into a rage, and indeed his eyes swiftly clouded over in anger. Gumong smiled insincerely and waited for him to blow up. But Moshi only glared at him. As this tall man glared, he seemed almost wronged, the rims of his eyes glowing red, growing red. Moshi silently turned away, biting his lip, holding himself back from speaking another word. Neither Zhang Yeshui nor Murong Chuyi caught the emotion in Moshi's eyes, but the awkwardness and hostility between Moshi and Gumong was something even a fool would see. Into this uncomfortable atmosphere, Zhang Yeshui gently said, "Guxiang, why must you say that about Shihajun? Deep and abiding passion is a rare thing. It's not like you don't know why he hasn't yet wed." Gumong blanched slightly, but his smile remained fixed. "Jiangxiong, what do you mean by this? What do I know about?" Zhang Yeshui didn't notice the cold sharpness beneath his sweet exterior. He replied frankly, "Princess Mengzi has been sick for a long time, and even after so many years of convalescence, she still isn't suited for marriage. Shihajun has been waiting all these years because of deep passion, and not because of what you said." He paused and sighed, exuding viciousness and no one liking him. The icy light in Gumong's eyes slowly softened. He gradually relaxed. He smiled, glancing meaningfully at Moshi. "Oh, so that's how it is." Gumong began to examine Moshi with a new and clinical look in his eyes, as if they had never touched, as if he was distantly curious. He looked Moshi up and down several times, assessing this man's tall physique, his chiseled and straight nose, his strong and slender fingers, and his long, straight legs. He was taking it too far. Gumong obviously understood Moshi best, understood the way his throat bobbed in the thick of passion, understood how his brows knitted when he could no longer restrain himself, eyes flashing with light, understood how strong his hips were, how unbridled his motions when he let go his restraint, understood what positions he liked, and how long he could torment someone in bed. Still, Gumong smiled as if he had never felt Moshi's skin on his. With Shihajun's physique, he really could take Princess Mengzi's life. Moshi's face was ashen. He stood silent for a moment. Finally, he could no longer endure it and turned to walk away. Zhang Yeshui eyed Moshi's silhouette standing at the mouth of the cave and frowned with a sigh. "Gumong, why are you constantly poking his sore spots ever since you recovered, making things unpleasant for him?" Gumong hugged his knees and barked out a perfunctory laugh. "It's just a habit. I used to like teasing him. Back then he could handle it, but it seems he's lost the skill. What a shame. It's his own fault that his mind only grows narrower. Jiangxiong, do you think it's because he only gets prettier as he ages, so he's become arrogant because of his looks?" Zhang Yeshui helplessly shook his head. As he made to respond, Murong Chuyi impatiently said, "Can't you two focus on the task at hand? Talk about this later." "I want to, but it's not that easy," Gumong sighed. "Rongrong needs to recover some strength first. She'll have to assess his pulse before we can find out how to cure him." As he spoke, he turned to look at the maiden from the feathered tribe, still crouched by the fire pit eating flames, then very fairly made a judgment. "Miss Rongrong is still weak. She can't do much, so we should let her rest properly." Although Moshi had walked to the periphery of the cave, the space was small enough that he overheard Gumong. This was why he used to be a favorite among girls. He always sincerely, instinctively, deftly, and elegantly helped a maiden in distress, even if the maiden in question was just Moshi shot a glance at Rongrong and thought, Just an ugly female bird demon whose feathers haven't even grown in. Murong Chuyi observed that Rongrong was truly in poor condition. He gave up insisting and turned to ask, "That whoever, why did she kidnap one of the feathered tribe?" "You mean Wu Yan?" asked Gumong. "Wu Yan took her so she could cultivate into immortality." Cultivate into immortality? Do you guys remember what the Shangao said before it summoned the time mirror? It wasn't much, but it hid many strange facts. It said the Dream Butterfly Islands were abundant with spiritual energy, so the demons here had gradually started to cultivate by fasting. The Bat Queen wholeheartedly wants to ascend, so she's rarely killed in recent years and hasn't needed to catch humans for food. "What was wrong with any of that?" Zhang Yishui asked. "Too much," Gumong said. "Chonghua doesn't practice any kind of demonic cultivation, so its cultivators have little understanding of demons or evil spirits. But when I was in the Liao Kingdom..." He paused. Probably out of consideration for Zhang Yishui, he lowered his voice when he mentioned the Liao Kingdom and didn't linger on it. "When I was there, I read many scrolls. Spiritual energy is split into two types, yin and yang. We cultivators take in yang energy and walk the path of gods and immortals, while demons take in yin energy and walk the path of devils," Gumong explained. "Which is to say, as a demon, Wu Yan's body is undoubtedly more compatible with yin energy. Killing less often may decrease her yin energy, but it can't provide her with pure yang essence needed to attain immortality." Zhang Yishui thought this over. So in other words, a demon cultivating into immortality would go against the natural order? "That's pretty much what it means," Gumong said. "A demon attaining immortality is like a mortal entering demonhood. Both are paths that defy the law of nature." I don't like the suggestion that that's, like, on the table. At these words, Moshi wouldn't help but turn to glance slightly at the sliver of Gumong's profile visible in the firelight. He considered that Gumong could be regarded as a mortal who had entered demonhood. Even with his spiritual core shattered, he could still use demonic energy to summon demonic weapons. However, the price he paid was the loss of 2 souls and the repeated tampering of his body. But Gumong cared for none of this and continued his explanation. "In any case, Wu Yan is the queen of the Bat tribe, and this tribe is descended from the offering..." Oh my god, sorry, I cannot talk right now. "This tribe is descended from the offspring of the feathered tribe and demonic beasts. Although some adulterated immortal energy still flows within their bodies, they possess mostly demonic beast energy. If her cultivation technique is unsuited to her demonic nature, it would consume a great deal of spiritual energy before she becomes an immortal and accelerate her aging in the process." He then asked, "So here's a question for you. If you were Wu Yan, what would you do at this point?" "Find a way to slow down the consumption?" Zhang Yishui replied. "Correct." As Gumong spoke, he glanced at Rongrong beside the bonfire. The best way for Wu Yan to slow down the rate of spiritual energy consumption is to increase the amount of immortal energy from the feathered tribe in her own body. That's why she took the risk of going to the feathered tribe's realm and kidnapping one. War Dove, exactly, you are correct. I was like, he doesn't remember the Liao Kingdom, right? So, what? Rongrong was still carefully eating flames out of her cupped palms. From time to time, she reached out a little claw to stir the fire, and then scooped up another handful of red gold light and nibbled at it. Some color had already returned to her breathtaking face, but she was still visibly nervous and frail. Murong Chuyi was a grandmaster artificer who never missed a detail. After looking her over from head to toe, his sharp brows furrowed. What's that on her neck? Gumong sighed. Those are bloodletting scars. Bloodletting? Jiang Yeshui's eyes widened. Gumong nodded. Correct. Since Wu Yan is basically a leaking jug, she's been maintaining her own vital energies by taking regular pills made of Miss Rongrong's blood. I found her in Wu Yan's pill refining room. Jiang Yeshui frowned. She's such an important resource, and Wu Yan's pill refining room must be strictly forbidden. No one would have pointed it out to you, so how did you think to look for it? Gumong smiled. Who said no one pointed it out? The one who pointed me toward the Bat Queen's pill room is right here. Who? Jiang Yeshui exclaimed. Murong Xiansheng. A beat of silence. Murong Chuyi stared coldly up at Gumong. What do you mean? Flames danced in those subtly imposing phoenix eyes. Are you accusing me of working with these damn birds? No, no, no. You're so beautiful. How could I? Gumong waved his hands. I meant... He shot an apprehensive glance at Jiang Yeshui, then turned to look at Moshi. He scratched his nose, embarrassed. It all started that day at Peach Blossom Lake. Gumong cleared his throat. Didn't I catch you bathing? That's the end of the chapter. Oh, we're telling this story. We're on chapter 96, Legend of the Bat Queen. Moshi's head whipped around. With his handsomely chiseled face and profile, he stared at them with an interrogative air. Jiang Yeshui's warm almond eyes were wide with shock. Murong Chuyi's expression darkened, and he squeezed a sentence between clenched teeth. You caught me cultivating. All right, if you say so. It's not like you would have forgotten the circumstances. I know you wanted me to hide your illness from the rest of the Yue clan, but the truth is young Yue Gongzi already learned of it long ago. Murong Chuyi said nothing. He was looking for treatments for you, to help you. But since you always hid it from him, he had only a rough idea of what to do and didn't know how to proceed. His sole option was to collect and comb through all sorts of texts on medical cultivation. And how did you know so much about it? Murong Chuyi asked. This time, it was Jiang Yeshui who sighed before Gumong could answer. Yue Chunqing's interest in medical texts is no secret. If you showed a little more concern for him, you would know this too. Murong Chuyi seemed extremely dissatisfied with Jiang Yeshui's words. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Gumong sighed. So you see, even though Murong Xiansheng took pains to hide his ailment, young Yue Gongzi's care for you is such that he must have noticed long ago. After a moment of silence, Murong Chuyi turned aside. He's little more than a child. Why should I let him meddle in my business? You're not wrong, Gumong said. But even a blind man could see the reverence young Yue Gongzi holds for Murong Xiong. Even if you want him to stand back and do nothing, it's impossible for him. He's not a healer, but he wants more than anything to find some sort of miracle cure for your illness. After a pause, he continued, Let's return to the matter at hand. There are countless legends of miracle cures in the 9 provinces. Fruits from the Flame Emperor's sacred tree, the tears of the Xiangfei Empress, indigo woad root watered with the sweet dew from Guanyin's sacred bottle. Murong Chuyi said nothing. But these are fairy tales. Of all of these legends, the only one with creditable records within the past few centuries is the Xueling Pill of the Dream Butterfly Islands. Xueling Pill? Why have I never heard of such a thing? Murong Chuyi countered. Because it's not orthodox medicine. There aren't many who know about it in Chonghua. However, were you to flip through any of the Liao Kingdom's ancient texts, for example, the copy of Compendium of Plants Demonic and Divine, For example, the copy of Compendium of Plants Demonic and Divine Shihajun lent to the Cultivation Academy some days back, you would find it mentioned. Wait a minute, Murong Chuyi cut in. What is it? Murong Chuyi narrowed his eyes. You seem very knowledgeable about the Liao Kingdom's records. Yeah. Heart pounding, Gumong's face paled. As Murong Chuyi stared at him, his voice took on a predatory edge. But as I recall, you've forgotten everything from the 5 years you defected. Silence fell. Jiang Yeshui hadn't noticed, and Moshi's thoughts were in turmoil, but this statement instantly alerted them to something extremely obvious. Yes, Gumong had indeed said he couldn't remember anything about the Liao Kingdom. So why then had he mentioned the Liao Kingdom's records just now, and the Liao Kingdom's spells earlier? Sure enough, this traitor was still hiding the truth from them. The atmosphere that had eased became strained again. The pressure in the air like a silk bowstring braced against flesh. Why did you lie? Murong Chuyi's gaze was as vicious as a cheetah's, and the words that left his pale, thin lips were laced with murderous intent. Speak up. Even Rongrong could see that something was amiss. She stopped with her handful of fire suspended in mid-air, unsure if she should still be eating. Gumong took in Jiang Yeshui's frown, then Murong Chuyi's glare, and finally Moshi's face. Moshi stood at the mouth of the cave, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, his expression inscrutable. But Gumong could see he was silently watching him from afar, waiting for his answer. For a moment, Gumong was still. Because I don't want to be dragged into anyone's black magic experiments. He glanced away indifferently, his fluttering lashes concealing all the mysteries within his eyes. If you guys knew I still remembered so many things about the Liao Kingdom's black magic techniques, would you have agreed to keep my secrets so readily? Murong Chuyi said nothing. But I really didn't lie to you. I only remember disjointed fragments from those 5 years in the Liao Kingdom. He paused. If you don't believe me, I'll swear an oath here and now. He raised a hand and said solemnly, If I, Gumong, speak a single false word, let me live and die alone, shunned by men and women alike, while the person I love marries and finds happiness with someone else. It might have been a trick of the light. As Gumong said these words, Moshi seemed to see a faint gentleness come over his expression, as though he wasn't swearing an oath, but rather sorrowfully yet tenderly giving his blessing. Let me die of jealousy. In the end, the softness disappeared, and too the sorrow. When Gumong looked up, his eyes gleamed anew with cheerful light. How about that? You gotta believe me now, right? Jiang Yeshui sighed and shook his head helplessly. Murong Chuyi looked as if he didn't believe a word of it, but neither did he want to waste more breath on Gumong. Moshi knew without a sliver of doubt that Gumong was still hiding something, but given Gumong's temperament, no one would have a single true word from him if he didn't wish to speak it, even if they pried his lips apart with a knife. In the face of their silence, Gumong spread his hands. Now, are you 3 beauties willing to hear about the notes in the Liao Kingdom's ancient texts? Murong Chuyi was silent for a while. Proceed. You won't regret it. Sirs, if you have coin to spare, spare it. If you have none, lend me your ears. This storyteller will spin you a tale. Silence. Gumong cleared his throat. It's like this. Legend has it that hundreds of years ago, the mother of a low-level Liao Kingdom cultivator was stricken by foul disease. The cultivator sought doctors throughout the land, but none could cure his mother's illness. One day, he heard of an immortal island, carried through the sea on the shell of the Xuanwu. All seasons were mild as spring on that island, and it was home to a wise immortal. The cultivator gathered his last strands of hope and boarded a ship for this legendary isle, along with his mother. The weather on the sea was changeable, and one night a wild storm rose from the ocean. The oars of their ship were depleted of spiritual energy, and they drifted aimlessly on the waves for 3 days and 3 nights. To keep the boat afloat, the little cultivator expended almost all his spiritual energy, fainting from exhaustion. When he awoke, he discovered that he had arrived on an island populated with thousands of bat demons. "This island," Jiang Yishui muttered. "Yes," Gumong said. "It's written in some of the more obscure records of the Liao Kingdom that when this little cultivator reached the demon island, he was certain they were doomed. Yet to his surprise, the demons on the island did not devour him immediately. Instead, they escorted him to the island's bat queen." "Wu Yan?" "Quite possibly, yes." "Then what happened?" "Then?" The records differ on what happened next. Some describe Wu Yan as a peerless beauty with a heart of gold and claim that she bestowed a xueling pill upon the little cultivator's mother. After the declining lady took the medicine, she recovered to full health within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Not only that, but so effective was this medicine that the aged matron regained her youth and reassumed her radiant appearance from decades ago. They thanked Wu Yan for her grace 1,000 times over, and mother and son happily returned home. Jiang Yeshui nodded. "And what do the other records say?" "The others are all a little wild. I'll pick some of the slightly more promising ones to recount. In other legends, Wu Yan was a wrinkled, white-haired hag who had never laid eyes on a man in her life. Thus she presented some terms to the little cultivator. She really did have a xueling pill made of fresh blood that she would furnish his mother to cure her illness. But in exchange, the little cultivator must stay on the island as her obedient little boy toy." Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yeshui stared at him in silence. "How about that? Isn't it disgusting?" Gumong said. "But in the end, whatever the truth, the fact is that there are more than a few records of the xueling pill on Bat Island." "So you're saying Yue Chunqing came here for this pill?" Jiang Yeshui asked incredulously. "Most likely," replied Gumong. "A few days before young Yue Gongzi left for the Dream Butterfly Islands, I heard he was looking to borrow a Liao Kingdom book of herbal medicines. Once I made the connection, I thought it prudent to take a look in Wu Yan's pill-refining room. Perhaps I could find some clues." He glanced at Rongrong. "And found them I have." "So the xueling pill is medicine refined from Miss Rong's blood?" asked Murong Chuyi. Gumong nodded. "That's right." Jiang Yeshui sighed. "How awful." "Right. This Bat Queen is quite the shady character. I'm more inclined to believe the second legend about the little cultivator. Wu Yan doesn't seem the type to give out medicine after hearing a pretty story. If you ask me, she'd definitely demand a commensurate price." There's art. Okay. I didn't see Wrong at first. Like her face, I wasn't really looking at it, and then I just... Oh. She's so cute. Yeah. Murong Chuyi lifted his chin slightly in Wrong's direction. "Why didn't you ask her for the truth?" Wrong had been quietly listening in, but as soon as they turned their eyes on her, she lowered her head in fright and resumed her meal. "Of course I asked her, but Wrong has been locked in the pill-refining room for years, being used for medicine. She doesn't know much about what happens outside, so I couldn't get any concrete answers. But my guesses are usually correct." "Then you have other guesses?" Murong Chuyi asked coolly. "Why not just share them all while we're at it?" Gumong rubbed his palms together and smiled. I do, actually. I also suspect the reason Wu Yan wanted to keep the little cultivator as her plaything might not be because she's lived on the island for too long and has never seen a man. Perhaps it was because she had seen a certain man before and had never forgotten him. A slight crease appeared between Murong Chuyi's sword-like brows. What makes you say that? Gumong looked at the feverish Yue Chunqing. The goo worm. After a pause, he continued. The goo worm in Yue Chunqing's body can change someone's voice and appearance, as well as their memories and personality. If Wu Yan merely wanted to snatch a man to keep as her plaything, why on earth would she go to so much trouble? Murong Chuyi pondered this and then said, Makes sense. Keep talking. The Shangao said before that young Yue Gongzi had violated some taboo, most likely that men are not allowed on this island. Young Yue Gongzi rashly landed here and was captured by Wu Yan, just like that cultivator from hundreds of years ago, who was nurtured and transformed into the man Wu Yan actually wants to possess. Of course, Gumong added, perhaps there are other reasons we aren't aware of. But I can't think of a better explanation than this. Murong Chuyi looked at Gumong thoughtfully. In the past, he and Gumong had almost never interacted. He only knew that, for a time, many in Chonghua believed they had nothing to fear so long as General Gu stood on the front lines, even if the sky were to fall. But he and Gumong rarely crossed paths. Murong Chuyi couldn't recall ever having spoken to him directly. Thus, he had never understood why people had that sort of superstition about a general. But as he listened to this sound analysis and observed Gumong's thorough and methodical reasoning, Murong Chuyi couldn't help but scrutinize his face in earnest. Slowly, he realized that Gumong did have a powerful charisma. When Gumong was taking things seriously, when his blue eyes were flashing with light, the vigor in his features was deeply compelling. So that's what I think, Gumong said, concluding his tale. In any case, the Firebat tribe and the Feathered tribe share a common origin. Jiangxiong, Murongxiong, you guys don't need to worry too much. I'm sure that Miss Rongrong will find a way to dispel the poison Wu Yan used. Gumong exuded an aura of competence. Perhaps this was why, whenever he said there was nothing to worry about, it seemed to act as a soothing balm. A few words were all it took for them to believe that he had everything under control. After a long moment of silence, Murong Chuyi replied, All right. Reality proved Gumong correct. As Rongrong ate more and more flames, the red marking between her eyebrows became darker and darker. In the end, she let out a little hiccup of flickering sparks and covered her face in embarrassment. I'm done resting. I can help now. Many thanks, said Jiang Yeshui. Please don't thank me, Rongrong said anxiously. If MAANGGGG hadn't rescued me from that pill refining room, I would have been Wu Yan's prisoner for a lifetime. As she spoke, she unfolded herself from the ground and approached Yue Chunqing. This little Guga who's been poisoned with goo. Would it be all right if I touched his face? Go ahead, Murong Chuyi answered. Rongrong performed a crooked obeisance at him and clumsily replied, Then, I ask the beauty to please pardon my offense. Seeing Murong Chuyi's expression, Gumong couldn't hold back a laugh. She's been locked up since she was young. Her only exposures to the outside world were a few bat demons and random books tossed in the pill refining room to entertain her. She talks a little strangely. Try to get used to it. Rongrong pursed her delicate scarlet lips, realizing she'd said something wrong again. Her face flushed a rosy pink, and she spoke no more. Head drooping, she reached out and carefully placed a fuzzy little claw over Yue Chunqing's forehead. After a while, she asked, May I touch his neck? You may, said Murong Chuyi. Rongrong touched the side of Yue Chunqing's neck. After inspecting it for a while, she asked, "May I also touch his chest?" Murong Chuyi preferred doing things simply and quickly, so he soon grew impatient with all her requests. You may touch him wherever you like as long as you cure him." Having received consent, Rongrong examined Yue Chunqing's chest, arms, and ankles. "How is he?" "He can be cured, but there's not much time, and I'll need to use a relative's blood for the antidote." She glanced hesitantly at Murong Chuyi. "Isn't this Xianjun his uncle? Is Xianjun willing to give yourself over to—" She shivered at the sight of Murong Chuyi's dark expression. Is that how the phrase "give yourself over to" is used?" she stammered. "No." Murong Chuyi pressed his colorless lips into a thin line, the glint in his eyes turning stormy. "Besides, I'm not his real uncle. You adopted him?" asked Rongrong. Murong Chuyi's features were chilly. "I was the one who was adopted." Rongrong was rendered speechless before this awe-inspiring cultivator. At this moment, Zhang Yeshui spoke up from nearby. "Miss Rong, does it have to be the blood of a relative?" It's best that way. Otherwise, it'll be very dangerous." "Then you can use mine," said Zhang Yeshui. Rongrong stared at him, taken aback. I'm his elder brother, from the same father, but a different mother." Zhang Yeshui smiled bitterly. "Unfortunately, we don't have exactly the same parents. Will my blood suffice?" Rongrong had noticed the way these men had spoken earlier. She saw that Murong Chuyi always acted as Yue Chunqing's guardian, while pushing Zhang Yeshui aside, so he couldn't get a word in edgewise. She had assumed Murong Chuyi was close to Yue Chunqing, and Zhang Yeshui was the outsider. She hadn't expected that Zhang Yeshui was Yue Chunqing's blood family, while Murong Chuyi had no blood relationship with him to speak of. Naturally, she didn't understand the difference between Di and Shu sons, nor the twists and turns of harem infighting. There's a footnote for Di and Shu sons. Born of the first or official wife, Di sons are direct heirs in matters of inheritance. Shu sons, born of other wives or concubines, are ranked second, if at all. The inexplicable ways of these humans made her head spin. It wasn't until Zhang Yeshui warmly spoke up for the third time. "Will my blood suffice?" that Rongrong snapped out of it. She nodded repeatedly. It will. It will." It would take time and effort to draw the goo out of Yue Chunqing, and the process was perilous and could not be disrupted. Zhang Yeshui was wary. Wu Yan has had her prisoner stolen, her prized tower destroyed, and now we've taken Miss Rongrong too. She'll no doubt be furious. I set down invisibility barriers around the cave, but if she can't find us with magic, I'm worried her next step will be to send her people to comb the island in search of us. Can we find a more secure hiding place?" Rongrong shook her head. She pointed at Yue Chunqing as she shyly turned down this request. "This little Guga cannot be moved right now. He's had the goo worm in him for a few days already. If we delay, I don't know if I can destroy the worm. We can't afford to wait." As Zhang Yeshui hesitated, Moshi, who had been listening silently at the mouth of the cave, turned around. "You all stay here and guard Yue Chunqing while the goo is drawn out," he said. "I'll deal with Wu Yan myself." That's the end of the chapter, and yep, chapter 97 is the last one for the volume, and the title of the chapter is "Do You Hate Me?" So that's fun. Moshi didn't have to spell it out. The others weren't stupid. They understood at once that he planned to find some far-off spot and expose his whereabouts, using himself as bait to divert Wu Yan. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous," Zhang Yeshui protested. "If I can't even handle a flock of bats," Moshi said, adjusting the hidden weapon compartment on his wrist. How could I hold my head up as the commander of the Northern Frontier Army? Jiang Yeshui knew Moshi had always been stubborn. Seeing that he wouldn't be persuaded, he looked toward Gumong. Gumong's face was a patchwork of shadow in the flickering light of the fire. It wasn't clear whether he would bestir himself for this. But after a long moment, he finally spoke. What's Shihajun thinking, running off to meet that crowd of bats alone? Are you in such a rush to become a trophy husband for the Bat Queen? At these words, Moshi looked at Gumong and then turned away. I'm ill-tempered and vicious, he said softly. All I do is order people to beat and kill. No one would take a liking to me. Gumong stared at him. They were the very words Gumong had just bullied Moshi with. He hadn't expected Moshi to commit them to memory and turn them back on him. No matter how thick-skinned Gumong was, he still felt abashed at that moment. Moshi fastened the buckles of his hidden weapon compartment. I'm leaving, he said over his shoulder. Hey, wait up. Turning halfway, Moshi paused. What is it? Gumong rubbed his nose. Humans wouldn't take a liking to you, but demons might. Moshi's face was stony. I heard that demons only look at human skins. Your personality is a bit of a bore, but your face is pretty, I'll admit. You've got that innocent allure. You're absolutely perfect as long as you don't open your mouth. If that old bat doesn't take a liking to you, she must be blind. Maybe she should go to Jiang Fuli's manor to get her eyes checked. With a sweep of his sleeves and a stunned pallor in his cheeks, Moshi turned on his heel and strode off. Gumong gazed at Moshi's retreating back and sighed. You know, I didn't notice while my memories were gone, but now that they've returned, I can see his attitude really hasn't improved in all the years I was out of the country. No, it's gotten worse. Now he can't even take a joke. At this, Moshi finally couldn't bear it anymore and whirled around. He looked as though he was about to fly into a rage, but he forced his anger down and only said with red-rimmed eyes, Gumong, did you just discover my terrible temper today? Moshi stalked away without another word, striding into the distance beneath the swaying moonlight. As he was about to vanish out of sight, Gumong turned to the others. Why don't I go with him? Youngsters can't be trusted to do things properly. I'll keep an eye on him, and we'll lead Wu Yan away together. Go, quickly, replied Jiang Yeshui. There's safety in numbers. Gumong grimaced. I'm just afraid he'll be angry if I tag along. Didn't you see his face when he left? Nevertheless, he still quickly followed after Moshi. Moshi's steel-toed military boots crunched over dried branches and withered leaves. After walking alone for a while, he heard the rustle of footsteps behind him. Shihajun. The sound of that voice made Moshi's heart ache unbearably. Instead of turning around, he quickened his pace. Gumong caught up to him. What are you walking so fast for? As if Gumong hadn't spoken, Moshi kept his head down and strode on. I'm asking you a question. Are you so mad you're ignoring me? It was some time before Moshi finally spoke up. Why are you insisting on coming with me? How long have you been in the army? You've fought too many battles not to understand the concept of strategic deployment of troops. Why else would I follow you? Gumong pulled a blade of foxtail grass and began fiddling with it. He smacked the wild flowers growing by the side of the path as he continued. We can't let anyone interfere with Jiang Yeshui and the others while they're dealing with the goo in the cave. The more of us on the outside attracting Queen Wu Yan's attention, the better. To provide for all possible contingencies, there must be someone on guard in the cave, but Murong Chuyi is clearly the better choice to stay behind. He's Yue Chunqing and Zhang Yeshue's uncle, so he's more suited to be their last line of defense. After laying out his logic, he smiled at Mo Shi. So why are you behaving so recklessly? Just because you don't want to see me? Mo Shi said nothing. The two of them trod over dead foliage, walking into the distance step by step. They hadn't yet removed the spells that concealed their spiritual energy, so they had no cause for worry even when they began to see bat demons here and there patrolling through the trees. For a while they walked shoulder to shoulder like this, until Mo Shi suddenly said, "Gumang." There's no one else here now, so can you tell me the truth? Do you really hate me? A pause. Why are you asking this out of the blue? When I didn't want you to accompany me, it wasn't because I didn't want to see you, Mo Shi replied. It's because I feel that you despise me, and I don't know how to face you. Gumang was silent. Their surroundings were very quiet, filled only with cold moonlight and the rustle of leaves. Even the twitter of birdsong seemed remote. Mo Shi hesitated. Have you really resented me all along? Why would I resent you? Under the light breeze and pale moon, Gumang's white clothes fluttered, billowing like waves. He tucked away the careless and cavalier mask he'd worn in front of Zhang Yeshue and the others, revealing a face that, having experienced too much death, seemed apathetic and unnaturally pale. Would I resent you for not being able to stay with me back when I fell into trouble? Or for thinking that I was drunk and making a scene when I most needed someone to pull me back? Mo Shi failed to respond. Gumang chuckled softly. In the time mirror, you asked me pretty much the same thing. Whether it was 8 years in the past or 8 years in the future, my answer is the same. He raised those long lashes like willow catkins. As if a gauze veil had been lifted, bright moonlight poured into his azure eyes. Gumang gazed at Mo Shi with those irrevocably blue eyes and said, Mo Shi, I've never hated you for this. Mo Shi suddenly stopped in his tracks and lowered his gaze to Gumang's face. Ever since he and Gumang had reunited, he had nigh always been powerful and decisive in front of Gumang. But at this moment, facing Gumang with his memories intact, what did Mo Shi have left? Gumang had watched him grow up. Gumang had seen all of his suffering, misery, and struggle, had forgiven all of his recklessness and immaturity. In front of Gumang, without his mind, Mo Shi might have been his lord, his companion, or Shihajun. But in front of his Gumang-gege, Mo Shi was just Mo Shi. His armor and blades were stripped away, leaving behind a scarred and bloody heart full of sincerity. Mo Shi's voice shook as he asked quietly, If you don't hate me, why do you have to treat me like this? Does there have to be a reason? It's no different from how you treated me, Gumang said. These are the choices we've made, just as you chose Chonghua and I chose the Liao Kingdom. The Time Mirror's release incantation says it best. Cross over the abyss of suffering. Chase no more the past. The past is in the past. There's no point dwelling on it. I've already let go of all our rotten history. You're the one who insists on clinging to it. What else can I do but be ruthless with you? Gumang's words felt like a scalding pipe pressed to the flesh of his chest. Mo Shi's heart strained to breaking. You've let it all go? Ages ago. Mo Shi closed his eyes, his long lashes fluttering. Gumang. Swallowing hard, he sighed. It's been 17 years. Gumang was taken aback. What? From the time you helped me complete my first assignment at the academy, I've known you for 17 years. From my youth to my coming of age, from the classroom to the battlefield, you said you'd always stay with me. You said you'd always be at my side, for richer or poorer. You once said you loved me. But how could Moshi speak those words now? They stuck in his throat, choking him with their bloodied sweetness. He closed his eyes, forcing down the quaver in his voice. He heaved a sigh, but his voice still shook as he spoke. Once upon a time, you taught me many things. You taught me to endure in silence. You taught me magic. You taught me the ways of the world, and you taught me the meaning of romance. Now you want me to stop clinging to you. Okay, I'll do my best, he said. But before that, Gu Shixiang, I ask you to teach me one last thing. It's been 17 years, half our lives so far. Teach me how to let go. Gumong said nothing. Moshi's eyes flew open as he jabbed at his own heart. Can you teach me how to feel at ease? His fingertips trembled faintly, and his eyes were red. How do I lose two souls? Can mine be missing instead? I still have my memory and my mind. I can't let go. I knew I couldn't change a thing upon traveling 8 years into the past, but I still wanted to ask you not to defect. I still hoped for you to stay, even if you think it's all useless. Moshi. What cross over the abyss of suffering? Chase no more the past. I've lived in the past for 8 years. Since the day you left, I've lived 8 years in the past. I wished so badly for you to recover your memories, but now that you've recovered them, you tell me you've let go. Gumong, Gu Shixiang, in those 17 years, what was I in your heart? As he choked out those last words, his voice went hoarse and broke off. They stuck in his throat, becoming sobs. He felt tears swimming in his eyes, but to let them fall would be too shameful. The rare times he cried had almost always been in front of Gumong. It could be excused when he was young, but how could he bear to appear so utterly defeated in front of the same person after all these years? He turned abruptly away, striding forward on rapid steps. The white birch forest rustled as the night fog wove around the trees. Moshi walked through this hazy and indistinct mist. After a while, he heard Gumong catch up. Gumong's footsteps always followed close behind his. It had been like this, too, many years ago, when they had raided enemy camps and chased deer in the countryside. No matter where they went, as long as Gumong was present, he would always be just a sidelong glance away. It had been the first thing in his life to bring him peace. Then Gumong defected and left. When Moshi marched and fought on his own, he never again found this kind of tacit understanding with his comrades. When he galloped ahead too quickly, leaving all others behind, he couldn't hear the voices of those accompanying him. As if all that existed between the heavens and the earth was him astride his horse, galloping toward a glorious, solitary end. Dissatisfied, he commanded his soldiers to follow no more than a single step behind. But even when the sounds of footsteps and hoofbeats returned, the faces were no longer the ones he remembered. From then on, Moshi understood that, although the death of an old friend was agonizing, it could not compare to the pain of an old friend irrevocably changed. When he thought how this person yet remained on this earth, but could never return to the past, of how their deep emotion had decayed, how their shared path had split into two unlike roads, how his beloved had become his enemy, that was a suffering that brought agony with each breath. Useless. Up ahead came an angry scream, dragging Moshi's thoughts out of their morass. All of you. Useless. Moshi stopped short. Gumong had heard too, and swiftly drew even with Moshi, peering through the dense fog. Is it Wu Yan? Their relationship was complicated and the atmosphere awkward, but they knew their priorities. They exchanged a wordless glance, then slowed their spiritual energy circulation and breathing to noiselessly approach the source of the voice. They followed the sound to a tree so giant that 3 men linking arms would have barely girdled its circumference. When they silently looked around it, the sight that greeted them astonished them both. That's the end of the book. Yep. Yeah. I was beginning to think we would end on a emotionally devastating note, which we did. But also we still got a cliffhanger. This is such a stark difference from the beginning compared to the end. Yes, I agree. That's, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Gumong was bowing to all the graves. That was the beginning of this novel. That feels like forever ago. Yeah, it's a cliffhanger. I don't know. It's not agonizing. But I am... It does agonize me because I want to know what the heck is on the other side of the tree. But, we gotta wait until, Monday to find that out. Oh, the knife on the knife on the spine. It's, Gumong's knife. His demon knife. Why aren't we focusing? Yep. Okay. That's true. Monday is not that far away. We'll be fine. We'll survive. We already looked at the interior art, right? Because that was revealed very soon into the book, as we just talked about. But I just want to make sure that I didn't forget. Well. Yeah. That was book 3. I guess... What, is it always book 3 of a meat bun series that's, like, particularly devastating? Was it book 3 in Arha? I'm forgetting now. But I think so. Yeah, I'm having a great time reading this series, too. Like, I'm loving it. I don't know. I wouldn't want to start streaming something and then stop, but like I am genuinely really enjoying it and I really want to know what happens next. So it's not hard for me to continue. Book 3 in Arha was one of my favorites and one of the most painful for sure. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Now I'm scared of what's going to happen if I read Case File. Should I be expecting book 3 to be the most devastating book in that series too? No, I say most. Maybe this won't be the most devastating. Maybe we're in store for more. But that's just what it feels like so far. Yeah, so far. I don't know. Well, when we come back on Monday, we're gonna start volume 4. Do we want to look at the cover of volume 4 now? I have all of the books now. So, guess we could do... Oh! And I just knocked all the books off my shelf. It's fine. Don't worry. I knew that was gonna happen. I'll deal with that. But first, more importantly, let's look at, book 4. You know, this doesn't look devastating at all. And that is... We're looking at Moshi. This is a Moshi cover. There's something that's, like, cracked behind him. A little bit concerned about that. And he's got, like, in his hand, kind of, there's Gumong. Oh. Okay, hold up. Hold up. There's, is that... Are we looking at 3 different versions of Gumong? Because I recognize 2 of them, but there's a 3rd. And now I'm kind of wondering about that. Oh yeah, maybe it's the time mirror being cracked. I don't know. Oh, and on the back, there's, like, water, and we got a sad Wolfie, and yeah, or dove, otherwise I'd be 2 inches from it. Yeah, I will be studying this cover. Oh, right, and the whale's on the front. How could I miss the whale up here? Yeah, but I don't know. This is I'm intrigued by this one. Well, I can't wait to get into it. I will see y'all on Monday. And I'm gonna go fix my shelf now. But y'all have a good rest of your week. Have a good weekend. Peace out.